Where'd You Go, Bernadette is directed by Richard Linklater and stars Cate Blanchett as the eponymous protagonist Bernadette Fox, a former architect who, after a few close calls and one massive wake-up call, decides that she's going to make a run for it. Or that's probably what the trailer makes you want to think. Alright, so initial thoughts. Just got out of the movie. Loved it. I definitely have some sore spots that I want to talk about, but before that, let me just talk to you about my relationship with Richard Linklater as a director and as a film lover. Just to give you some context. 8 years ago, I was between internships. I was home alone and logged onto Facebook, as one does, and decided to put out a post asking for recommendations for probably the most cheesy romantic comedy I could watch to pass my time and distract me from all the nihilistic thoughts in my head. And what one of the acquaintances of mine recommended to me at that point in time changed my life completely and made me see films in a different way. That movie is far from cheesy, and it was called Before Sunrise. That led me to watch Before Sunset and made me look into early Jean-Luc Godard or underrated Satyajit Ray films like The Hero, John Cassavetes' Faces opening night. All these films completely redefined how I looked at movies in general.
Richard Linklater is kind of one of the very few people who can actually have a gorgeous, palpable conversational scene. Every conversation may not really hold much worth, but it still is valuable.
I've had a good few days to think about the film, and it's unfortunately probably the weaker of Linklater's movies, mostly because it feels like a bunch of episodes that don't really transition into each other. Like each scene is a vignette, and most of these vignettes are pretty good, but they just don't feel like they're kind of woven in together. But the vignettes that do work out, they hit home.
There are a lot of incidents that, you face and that make you want to not do the thing because you associate it so much with the shit that you experienced back when you were doing that thing, and it hurts.
So one thing her art reminds me of is this incident that happened to me when I was in film school, and my graduation research project included me having to make a short film as a practical component of the project. There was a lot of pre-production that was involved. We shot for one day, and then for one reason or another, it just fell through. I had a really bad panic attack, and I thought that I would fail and that I would have to repeat a year, but
during my first internship, a couple of people I was working with kind of swooped in and saved my project, got good grades.
And then I never made a film until this January when I decided that I wanted to. But in those 8 years, I felt like every time I would try to write something, or even if I finished writing something, I would feel that it wouldn't complete and I would fail. What Cate Blanchett and what Richard Linklater did with this character and how it's portrayed on screen, that hit home really hard. So a lot of the subplot focuses on what drove Bernadette away from architecture as a profession. There's one very interesting plot device that's used to help with exposition. It's kind of a YouTube video essay / biographical documentary on the character, and it's split into two. So that really helps with the exposition, which is both good and bad. Good because it helps us focus on the characters when the YouTube video isn't playing, and bad because, spoon feeding. But the one thing that drives that home is basically this parallel set of incidents intercut between each other, and One of them has Bernadette's husband, LG, speaking to a psychiatrist about how he fails to understand Bernadette, and the other one is Bernadette ranting to an old friend about everything.
You know, I'm half asleep, I'm a blank slate, and then the data starts reloading. It's Bernadette Fox, 20-mile house, destroyed, failure. You know, it's like failure's got its teeth in me and it won't stop shaking.
That kind of hints into her want to be understood.
I think there's one very simple answer to all of your problems. Get your ass back to work and create something.
And that's just heartbreaking, and it just, it affects you. Sure, like I said, for a character study, it's weak. It's neatly wrapped up and bow-tied, and it looks pretty, and it's pretty escapist. There are just so many convenient payoffs to setups that seem so promising. But is that really a bad thing?
Even though there is a lot of sadness in most of Richard Linklater's movies, what this movie does, and considering the context of how shitty the world is right now, it's always nice to have something that's incredibly made and also, you know, surprisingly optimistic when it comes to dramatic fiction.
Look, the last few years have been a dumpster fire of epic proportions, and if a story that deals with PTSD and grief and trying to find your artistic voice and reclaim it again, you know, in an optimistic way, I don't mind. In fact, I welcome it. And knowing my experiences, I don't think I've changed my mind as much as I've come to recognize the kind of flaws that are in this film, and know that despite these flaws, I still appreciate the movie for being what it is and existing at the moment.
Oof.
And sometimes that's enough, really. You don't need anything else.